We are now in Chapter 1, The World of Religions. We are discussing the Discovering the True Church, written by Father Agustin Florentino. So the first chapter in his book is like showing the big picture to the reader. What are the different religions in the world? What about in the Philippines? What are the big religions? And what are the different religions, whether they're big or small? And somehow, to better understand what will be discussed very soon in the next chapters. It's like this gives like the global picture to the discussion. In this chapter, we are going to understand or discuss what do we understand by the word religion, and then some descriptions of the differences between sects and denominations, although really in the discussion throughout the book, the author would interchange sect, religion, church to mean a religious group. So there's really no strict distinction, but for the sake of clarity, so there will be a short discussion on this. And then the author will proceed to the different religions in the world. So like, what are the big religions? And then the same thing will be done, but on the national level in the Philippines. Religion. So according to one author, his name is Lactantius, so the word religion comes from religare, and religare means to bind. So, well, from this, we can already make some like development of that word. So, religion indicates the bond of duty, whereby a man is bound to God. So we bind our souls to Him alone. So this binding is clearly manifested when man gives the worship due to God alone. So from religare to bind, so we reach worship due to God alone. Therefore, religion denotes properly a relation to God, a relation of worship. So it's a system of truths, laws, practices, which man recognizes and observes in paying worship to God. So that's religion. A system of truths, laws, and practices. And within these truths, laws, and practices are within the context of paying worship to God. So adoring God, worshiping God. So that's religion. Now, the differences between sect and denomination, well, there are different characteristics to compare them, from which to look at. So, in terms of size, the sect are usually smaller than the denominations. Relationship with other groups, well, denominations are more, they are able to work in harmony with other religious groups. They accept the other denominations. Unlike sects, they reject. With regard to wealth, well, denominations, well, they usually have extensive wealth. They are richer than sects. Religious service. So this is quite interesting. With the denominations, the emphasis is a bit more on the intellect. So think of the Lutherans, think of the Anglicans, think of the Presbyterians. For the sects, the emphasis is usually on the emotion. So they try to recapture the conversion thrill. It's more informal. There's an extensive participation of the people. What about the pastors, the ministers? Well, for the sects, the pastors are usually unspecialized. They have very little if any, professional training. And usually they only do it on a part-time basis. So the opposite is true for the denomination. They're specialized, they're professionally trained, they're full-time. With regard to doctrines, this is another interesting difference. So the sect tend towards literal interpretation of scriptures. They emphasize also upon otherworldly rewards, so in the afterlife. The denomination, they are more liberal in their interpretation of scriptures, and they also emphasize the reward here in this world. Membership, well, in the denomination, they are usually born into the group, or there are some ritualistic requirements. There's intellectual commitment. Again, in the sect, the commitment is more on the emotional. So what's that? Membership is about the conversion experience. How do they see the world at large, the external world, you may say? Well, for the denomination, they endorse the prevailing culture and social organizations, while the sects, they are at war with the secular world. The world is evil. For the social status of the members, for the sects, they are usually coming from the lower class, while the denomination, they're usually coming from the middle class. So these are the differences. Okay, so now let's go to the world religions. So these statistics were made, or were, you may say, it's true in the year 2010. The study was published in 2012, but the numbers really refer to the year 2010. It was done by the Pew Research Center, a research center in Washington, D.C. Now, it's interesting to see that there are 2.2 billion Christians in the world. It's a lot. That's almost 1/3. Muslims, there are also so many. 1.6 billion, almost 1/4 of the population. And surprisingly, religiously unaffiliated. So it's interesting to know from mainly which countries are this. But anyway, 1.1 billion. Wow. This is an invitation for us to really do a lot of missionary work. How come there are 1.1 billion, like half of the 2.2 billion of Christians? How come there are 1.1 billion who still do not know Jesus Christ? Hindus, there are 1 billion Hindus. Buddhists, there are 500 million Buddhists. Folk religionists, 400 million. Other religions, 58 million. The Jews, 14 million. So you can say that the biggest groups are the Christians, the Muslims, the Hindus, all of them over 1 billion. And somehow the Buddhist is like the 4th biggest. Okay, so Christianity is the biggest group. So from a handful of original disciples, it grew to a huge 2.2 billion adherents today. Well, this may be considered as a big success, but it's also true that there are many people who do not know, or who have not heard, or have not accepted Jesus Christ. 4.7 billion. Well, the total, as we have seen, of the world population in 2010 is almost 7 billion, 6.9 billion. But today, there are 8 billion people on earth. But the thing is, this Pew Research Center has no, they do not have the updated statistics. Probably it's about to come out. But this is the latest that we have. 4.7 billion who do not know, who have not accepted Jesus Christ. We have to do a lot of missionary work still. Within Christianity, we see that, well, unfortunately, it's no longer a single religion, but divided into several denominations. Today, the biggest groups within Christianity are Catholics, Protestants, and the Orthodox. Here is how the 2.2 billion is distributed. So there are 1 billion Catholics, 50.1%, practically the half, a little bit more than half of the Christians are Catholics. 800 million, a little over 1/3, are Protestants. 260 million are Orthodox. 28 million are other Christians. Looking deeper into the Catholics, so this is what we see. So unlike the other Christian churches, the Catholic Church is still one group with one faith. The Catholic belief is summarized in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. The Catholics have only one head, called the Pope. So this is the Catholic Church is composed of 1 billion members in 195 countries. It is literally Catholic, meaning universal. So one can find a Catholic Church almost everywhere in the globe. The 5 countries, biggest Catholic with biggest Catholic populations are Brazil, 127 million, Mexico, 96 million, the Philippines, 76 million, the United States of America, 75 million, and Italy, 49 million. So in the year 1054, the Orthodox separated from the Catholic Church. They number 260 million today. So it's good to know that for the first 1,000 years, when you say that a person is a Christian, you actually mean that he is Catholic. When you say that the person is Catholic, you actually mean that he is a Christian. Why? Because everyone was Catholic for the first 1,000 years, with very, very few exceptions. Okay, so here and there are what is called the Nestorians. There was a council before, and those who did not agree with that council, so they followed Nestorianism. I don't know if they still exist today, but they existed for some time. Also, one early separation is the Assyrians. The Assyrians still exist today. Also, you have the Donatists. Also, you have this and that. But they are very small groups. I don't know if they would reach 1 million or I don't know. But they are very, very small groups, each one. And I don't know if they still exist today. Well, Assyrians, I know that it still exists today. But the others, Nestorians, Donatists, I think Donatists does not exist today anymore. So the big separation really happened in 1054. So it's like a huge hemorrhage within Christianity. That's the Orthodox Church. So from 1054, now there are 2 groups within Christianity. So you can say Christian Orthodox or Christian Catholic. Okay, so they number 260 million today. However, unfortunately, they are divided into several groups, and these groups, each one is independent and autonomous from each other. Generally, they have similar doctrines, very similar to the Catholic Church, with very, very little differences. Well, I don't know, not so little probably, because if it's about divorce, it's not very little. So some Orthodox Church would allow divorce. So there, no. So these are the examples: Greek Orthodox Church of Alexandria, Bulgarian Orthodox Church, Russian Church of Greece. There are more than 12 Orthodox churches independent from one another. So they only have a primum inter pares, so like a moral leader, but the others, they may or may not follow what that leader is saying. So for example, I don't know now who is their figurehead. It used to be the one in Greece. But supposing it's still the same, so if the Patriarch of Greece says something, the Russian Patriarch may or may not follow what that Greek Patriarch said. In the Catholic Church, it's not the same. If Pope Francis were to say one thing, the Diocese of Manila, Archdiocese of Manila, the Archdiocese of Lipa, the Diocese of wherever, they have to follow what the Pope said. So it's not optional. So the Pope has real jurisdiction on all the dioceses in the world. But in the Orthodox, it's more of like practically a suggestion. They may or may not follow it. So that's why they really do not have one leader. So they have several independent, autonomous leaders. The Protestants is more complicated. The Protestants came about in the year 1517 when the Catholic priests Martin Luther, Father Martin Luther, a former Augustinian monk, rebelled against his Catholic Church. He was the priest of the church. 1517. So, meaning from, you may say, from the foundation moment in the time of Jesus Christ up to 1054, there was only one Catholic Church. But with this, when Orthodox separated, so then, from then on, from 1054 to 1517, there were now two groups within Christianity, Orthodox and Catholic Church. Again, I insist, there are smaller groups. There are small groups like the Assyrians, etc. But you know, they're just so small that, yeah. Okay, so the big groups really are Orthodox and Catholics. From 1517 onwards, so many Protestant churches, sects, denominations came about. Martin Luther, apparently, he wanted, so different from Martin Luther King, American of recent times. So this is Father Martin Luther, a German who began Protestantism. So he began wanting to reform the church, the Catholic Church. But he ended up with so many divisions, so many conflicts among themselves. So there is this estimate by the World Christian Encyclopedia that there are as many as 9,000 Protestant denominations and another 22,000 independents. That's a lot. And that's a lot of confusion as well. So this is a summary. So 22,000 independents, 9,000 Protestants, and they also say that there are 1,600 marginals and 168 denominations who are of the Anglicans. Although the World Christian Encyclopedia's method in determining what counts as a denomination may be debatable, but what is clear is that there are several thousands of non-Catholic denominations today. So the 9,000 Protestant denominations came from the original handful of Protestant groups in the 16th century. You only had very few, what is called today the mainline Protestants, Lutherans, Calvinists, etc. No? So, and then from there, it became 9,000 or actually more, depending on how you categorize a denomination. In fact, the Pew Research Center, very in a scientific way, so they define what is a Protestant. So the first group is made up of historic Protestants who belong to churches originating or reformulated at the time of the 16th century Protestant Reformation in Europe, as well as other denominations that came later, such as the Methodists, etc. So that's one group of the Protestants. The second group is the Anglicans. So you know the story that the Anglicans, this began with Henry VIII. When Henry VIII, King of England, he was not given the permission to have a divorce with the Queen. Well, he did not like it, and he separated from Rome. And that's the beginning of the Anglican Church. The Episcopalians are like, you may say in general, like Anglicans, but outside England. So these are the Episcopalians. But the Episcopalians themselves are divided into many independent groups. And then the third group, broadly defined as Protestants, is the independent Christians. So they claim, the independent Christians have developed ecclesial structures, beliefs, and practices that are claimed to be independent of historic organized Christianity. Okay? So, how is the 800 million divided or distributed? So, the biggest Protestant group, actually groups, are the Pentecostals. So the Pentecostals are 86 million, Anglicans 85 million, Lutherans 78 million, Baptists 72 million, etc. Keep in mind that the 86 million, the Pentecostals, it does not refer to one Pentecostal denomination, but to a group of many Pentecostal-inspired denominations. So, for example, you have the original Church of God. So it has the Pentecostal inspiration. You have the Apostolic Church of Pentecost. You have the United Pentecostal Church. You have the Elim Fellowship. So these are independent from one another. It's just that their inspiration is Pentecostal. That's why they are grouped as Pentecostals. But it's not one religion or one church. From the world landscape of religions, let us go now to the national landscape, the religions in the Philippines. So for centuries, practically all the believers of Christ in the Philippines were Catholics. With a little exception, in 1762 to 1764, the British came and invaded quote unquote the Philippines for such a short moment. But I don't know if it has religious consequences, if Anglicanism was propagated in those years. Anyway, it can be said that practically all the believers in Christ until 1898 in the Philippines were Catholics, practically all of them. But in 1898, the Americans brought with them Protestantism. This is a very good piece of information, that Protestantism in the Philippines is really young. Well, actually, Protestantism itself is young. It only began in 1570. And it only reached the Philippines in 1898. So the Catholic Church in the Philippines is the biggest single religion. The combined number of non-Catholic Christians, those who believe in Jesus Christ, but are not Catholics, is merely 12% compared to 80% who are Catholics. So this is the statistics. 100 million Filipinos all over the country. Of this number, 80 million are Catholics. So this is from the Philippine Statistical Authority of 2019. So there are 80% Catholics, or the 80% of the population is Catholic. And then the combined non-Catholic denominations is only 12.4 million. How is this divided or distributed, this 12.4 million? So the biggest, single group, Iglesia ni Cristo is single, is Iglesia ni Cristo, 2.6 million, 2.7 million. Sometimes people have the impression that there are so many because they have chapels here, chapels there, that there are so many in the world, in the Philippines. But actually, there are only 2.7 million. El Shaddai, the Catholic Charismatic group, is 8 million. So, the Evangelicals is 2.4 million. But again, these Evangelicals, it's not one group. This is a collection of several groups. The Philippine Council of Evangelical Churches. So, well, the single religion really is the Iglesia ni Cristo, 2.7 million. So the Evangelicals, there are 2.5 million, and as we have said, El Shaddai is 8 million, Catholic Charismatic group, 3 times bigger than the Evangelicals that are already grouped together. But again, they are not one single denomination. They do not have just one belief and one head, but independent groups. So it's good to see how these groups proliferated. So looking at the Pentecostal and holiness inspired movement, so you have the Alpha and Omega Christian Church. Nothing to do, no relation with the Apostolic Faith Mission, no connection with the Assemblies of God. So these are independent groups. Church of the Nazarene, Ecclesia of the Holy Spirit, Iglesias Espiritu Santo, Evangelical Full Gospel Revival Center, Holiness Nazarene Mission, Iglesia ng mga Panganay, Pentecostal Church of Christ, Pentecostal Church of God of the Philippines, Pentecostal Church of Jesus Christ. If you examine the evangelistic associations, the evangelicals, which is worldwide, the evangelically inspired groups, it's combining them, they are the biggest. So that you have the Calvary Temple Evangelistic Association, Christ for Greater Manila, Christian Evangelical Mission, Christian Layman Evangelistic Crusade. So you have all of these different non-Catholic denominations in the Philippines. There will be a more like a continuation of the discussion with more pieces of information in chapters 6 and 7 of the non-Catholic denominations. This is, well, since this is just an introduction of the world of religions, so we end here chapter 1. Thank you for listening.